When I clicked on it, there was like a little warning from YouTube that it might be too inappropriate for certain audiences. So I knew we struck gold the moment I found
That's
it.
it.
Welcome to Theoretical Nonsense, the Big Bang Theory watch-along podcast. No PhD necessary.
We're the podcast that recaps all episodes of The Big Bang Theory, no spoilers.
So hop into your favorite spot.
Make yourself a grasshopper and enjoy the ride.
Hello there, Ryan.
Hey Rob, what's up?
Not much. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
I am too, because we just watched the Middle Earth Paradigm.
Oh yeah, Halloween episode.
I know. I love seasonal episodes. Like in any TV show that I watch, I love a holiday-themed episode.
And it doesn't matter which holiday, right? It can be Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, St. Patrick's Day. I love them all.
Me too. Yeah, they're great. And so was this one. What'd you think of this one?
I enjoyed it. I like that. I had taken notes thinking like, oh, I have a few notes here, a few notes there. And then I actually had to add pages to my notebook to take more notes because everything I picked up on, I'm like, oh, I need to write more. And like, I got fascinated with it. I liked it.
Yeah, this whole episode was just like rich with things to talk about.
Yeah. And stuff that resonated too. I'm like, oh, I wonder how that goes. So yeah, I liked it.
All right. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping stuff. We got our first 5-star review.
Woohoo!
So that's exciting. So right now we are sitting really nice at 5 out of 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. So I hope it stays that way. And a shout out to Beef Supreme. So thank you for your review. We really appreciate it. So if anybody else wants to give us a review, please feel free. And if it's a 5-star review, not that I'm trying to bribe you or anything, but we'll give you a shout out on the podcast.
Definitely makes us feel better about ourselves.
Yes, I needed the ego boost. I really needed it.
It gets me through the week.
Yeah. Also, one thing that when I was editing the episode last week, I figured out where the sound effects are on my editing program. I don't know if you noticed in the last episode where I added like a little bell transition, a little ding.
Yeah.
In the very beginning. I found the sound effects.
That's what I'm talking about.
So hopefully people like them because I'm going to wreck our episodes full of sound effects. I was thinking about doing a sound effect for like the IQ point or having a certain sound for that or having a different sound for a partial IQ point or something like that. And,
I like this idea.
Whenever I say something stupid, it'll just be its own chime.
Replace my voice with just like fart sounds the whole time. So what do you think, Ryan? Or like
I'll enter in something
Brown.
right now. Insert sound effect right now. Also, per our conversation last time, I went back and I found the Chris Isaak video, Wicked Game.
Yes.
I totally recognize that song. Like I was like, once I heard the moment I heard it, I was like, oh my god, I hear this song in so many 90s TV shows.
Yes.
Like it just kind of gets slipped in there and whew, what a video.
Always a very sexy time song, right?
I actually, before, when I clicked on it, there was like a little warning from YouTube that it might be too inappropriate for certain audiences. So I knew we struck gold.
That's it.
But it totally like reminded me of, did you ever watch that movie, The Room?
Yes.
With Tommy Wiseau?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that where it's like, this guy's like a celebrity trying to do, well, not that Tommy Wiseau is a celebrity or anything like that.
Oh, he is now.
Yeah. But he was produced like, just like Chris Isaak, who was producing this video. It's like, it's my video. I can do whatever I want. I'm going to show the world that I can get some with a model. So it kind of reminded me of that because I feel like the entire premise of The Room was just proving that Tommy Wiseau could make out with someone.
That's fair. In fact, Chris Isaak actually had his own show. I think it was on Showtime for a season or two. and I don't really remember it, but I think it was the same premise of, you know what? I'm gonna get some, and good for him. I mean,
Was it a reality show
no,
about like his life or something, or
I think it was like kind of a fictional reality. I think it was about him, but in a fictional world. And
we
I'm
might
trying to
have to
think
look
of
this up?
something that might be similar. I guess I'm thinking similar to Californication, except that was completely fictionalized. But it's that notion of it's about a writer who is living his life.
Okay.
But man,
Was that an
that
older show or?
I want to say it was like '90s, late '90s, early 2000s. So
Okay.
it's a couple decades out there.
Try to find it. Maybe we'll review an episode or two.
Ah, it's a good idea. And all of his music videos there are worth watching.
Well, speaking of other music videos, they saw I looked into something else too. I looked into the WAP video that wet ass pussy.
with Super Mario or just the
Not with that
regular?
one, just the
Ah,
original one, because I was like, when you said wet ass pussy, I was like, what is that? And then I looked into it. I was like, oh, you're talking about WAP.
WAP, yes.
Got it. I didn't put those pieces together.
That's what it stands for.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know that because I'm not super into hip hop, but I
Hmm,
heard a lot about WAP. Everyone was
yeah.
talking about WAP for like a really long time, and I was like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But I
I'll
just
figure.
kind of never did until you mentioned it. And dang, like Cardi B, that video has 464 million views.
Oh,
So good
wow.
for you, Cardi B.
You're
Good for
doing
you.
something right.
Yeah.
But you gotta check out the Super Mario mashup with it now because like the beat goes so well, the rhythm with Super Mario that you're like, this shouldn't exist. Why?
It's going to change how I feel about Super Mario.
Exactly. You're gonna have confusing emotions when you play Super Mario.
Well, I just wanted to give you like a little follow up for our conversation last a couple weeks ago. And then more housekeeping stuff. If anyone's interested, we have a Twitter account. It is at Theoretical Pod. We're sitting fine and dandy with 0 followers. So thank you, world. We also have an email, theoreticalnonsensepod@gmail.com. So feel free to email us any questions, comments, or how much you love us. That would be appreciated.
We do love hearing that.
Yeah. First person to email us, we will read your entire email out. Good or bad.
Just imagine.
I'm,
Okay, Rob, read it. I don't
I'm,
want to.
I don't. Not enough explicit check marks on the website to allow this. I'm going to regret making this proclamation, but you know what? I'm going to do it because our email has been lonely. So crossing our fingers, it's a good one.
Just imagine this podcast has now been canceled. What? What's happened?
Also, if this is your first time listening, Ryan has actually never watched Big Bang Theory before, so this is his first time watching it, and this is my like 4th or 5th time watching the entire series. So this is going to be a no spoiler show.
Also, I'm keeping a tally of if I am Sheldon based on times that I act like Sheldon, since so many people say that, you know what, you remind me of Sheldon. But I'm also keeping a tally of times where I do not act like Sheldon or another character, especially for Penny, because she's kind of his counter to the max. Whether or not I am more like somebody else. And right now we have it's a 5-2 for me being Sheldon.
I'm going to write that down. 5-2. In favor of Sheldon, huh?
Yep.
All right, Sheldon, you ready to get started?
I am ready.
All
So,
right.
with this episode, it is the Halloween episode, but it starts off with the boys coming home from a paintball debacle. They are covered in blue paint, and things have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, the guys don't really strike me as the type that would play paintball. Because have you ever played paintball before?
I used to play a little paintball in high school.
It's hurt. It hurts, man.
It hurts. I remember getting a blood blister and then like a huge bruise on my thigh that lasted like for the better part of a year. And I'm like, I don't like that.
Jeez. Oh my
Yeah.
god, a whole year? Oh.
Yeah, there was some a little like it, scarring. It broke the skin some, and it had some issues. And I'm like, I don't. I think I was too close, and the acceleration was too uh, high on the opponent's weapon, and it was not a good time.
You know, I've heard like some horror stories of how there's some assholes out there that when they play, they'll actually freeze their paintballs.
Uh-huh.
So that would just be like a rock solid ball just coming right at you, and it wouldn't even burst or anything like
You
that.
know,
So you
that would
play paintball,
explain a
everyone,
lot.
please don't do that. Please don't do that. That's very mean.
Because I remember some of these guys, their paintballs would like just bounce off me, not burst or anything, and cause a lot of pain. And maybe they were freezing them. They were not very nice people.
Yeah,
So
that's actually why a lot of paintball companies will actually enforce you to buy their paintballs on site, which I strongly like. I'm good with.
that makes sense.
It
Yeah,
keeps everyone safe.
yeah. Wow. But that's the impression that I got. They went to some sort of company, and because they were teamed up with a bar mitzvah, right?
Yep, they lost to Kyle Bernstein's bar
Bar
mitzvah party.
mitzvah. And it didn't help that Howard shot Sheldon in the back.
Well, he was leading them into disaster.
Disaster. Shouting, "Get the one in the yarmulke."
Get the kid in the yarmulke! Get the kid in the yarmulke!
So yeah, not a lot of coordination there. So yeah, they probably won't be playing paintball again soon. But I'm still surprised that they played it at all. I wonder what conversation they had to get out there and play.
Well, they must play a lot because it looked like they had their own gear.
Yeah, that's true.
So
And no
keep that in mind.
spoilers. Maybe it'll come up again in the
Yeah,
future, but maybe
maybe.
we don't know.
We'll
They
find
might get
out.
revenge on the bar mitzvah
Yeah,
party.
what was his name? Well, Kyle Bernstein's a man now, so they'll get him
Yeah,
back.
get him back. You're a man now. Suffer like a man. So then Penny comes in and invites them to a party, and it comes out that it's a Halloween party, and you see the twinkle in the guy's eyes because costume time.
Yeah, it wasn't even the dancing part. It was the idea that they got to dress up.
In fact, the dancing, the alcohol, the socializing did not interest them at all. It was the dressing up. And they try to clarify too. What type of costumes are we talking about? Theme based. Can we do Norse gods, Greek gods? Can we do comics? Can we do manga, anime? Right?
Yeah.
And Penny's just like, sure, whatever.
Is there a theme?
Is it
Yeah. Halloween.
Halloween? And
Well,
I
this
love that.
actually gets.
Oh,
I was
go
gonna
for
say,
it.
this actually leads me into like the first IQ point. I don't know if you about you, but I researched a little bit of Halloween and where it comes from, and it's like, because it got me thinking about just the whole costumes of Halloween and where it really comes from. So I thought about researching either this or cosplay, but not to do too much spoilers. There is a lot of dress up in Big Bang Theory, so I think we could address cosplay and the history of cosplay on a later
Mm.
episode. But since this is a themed one, Halloween, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about the history of Halloween.
Oh, that's great. I didn't even think about that. And I love Halloween. I my IQ point was more about costume contests, but
Oh,
I like your notion of talking about Halloween. So take over.
all right. So the history of Halloween and dressing up, and I found this on history.com. So it must be real.
Of course. Anything
So
online.
Halloween originated with the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, where people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. The Celts lived about 2,000 years ago in the area that is now Ireland, United Kingdom, and northern France. The Celts celebrated the New Year on November 1st. So the new year, November 1st, this day also marked the end of summer and the harvest, and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to Earth. To commemorate the event, Druids built huge sacred bonfires where the people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. And then fast forward a little bit in history, by 43 AD, the Roman Empire conquered the majority of the Celtic territory. And during the 400 years that they ruled, two of the Roman festivals were combined with the Celtic celebration of Samhain. So they kind of started to blend their celebrations at this point. Fast forward a little bit more to the 8th century, Pope Gregory III created All Saints' Day to be on November 1st to honor all saints. So all this kind of comes into play, like kind of merges a little later on. So by the 9th century, the Christian church made November 2nd to be All Souls' Day, a day to honor the dead, which is widely believed today that the church was attempting to replace the Celtic festival of the dead with a church sanctioned holiday. All Souls' Day was very similar to Samhain, with big bonfires, costumes as saints, angels, and devils. All Saints' Day was called All Hallows, which is derived from the Middle English word All Hallow Messe, meaning All Saints' Day. And the night before, the traditional night of Samhain in the Celtic religion began to be called All Hallows' Eve, and eventually evolved its pronunciation into Halloween. And Halloween in America in the beginning was very, very limited in the beginning. It was mostly in the European areas of where like Ireland and UK was, but as immigrants were starting to come to America, it started becoming more and more popular in America around the 19th century when America was flooded with immigrants, especially with the millions of Irish fleeing from the potato famine. So that's pretty much the history of Halloween and where it comes from and why we dress up.
Yeah, and there's so much interesting stuff about this that I could talk about for a long time. But I know that part of the racism against the Irish throughout time had a lot of people hating the holiday and trying not to celebrate it, as saying, "Oh, we don't want their holiday," and that people refused to go trick or treating, considering it something for poor and beggars to be doing, and that if you did it, you were not elite or a better class. I've also heard that oh, that this isn't the only holiday throughout history that uh, other cultures have kind of uh, consumed and made part of their own. So you get like Christmas, for instance, being on winter solstice, which is Yule. Easter being the traditional Easter being around another astrological phenomenon. Is it? Have to double check this, but I believe it's spring solstice, spring equinox, right? Connected to that or in between. I have to double check that. But my birthday is actually right on one, which is 6 weeks between solstice and equinox. And it's the night before Groundhog's Day. And so I always celebrate every year. I'm like, hey, it's not just my birthday; it's a really important holiday. I got to find out that groundhog.
And
But
then
it
you
isn't.
watch Groundhog's Day, right?
Oh yeah, I love that movie. And now we have the well, it's not really a sequel, but a little commercial that they did years later with Bill Murray and the groundhog, right? I'll have to show that to you. But yeah, they
Yeah, I
kind
don't
of
think I
did
know what you're talking
they did
about.
a
Yeah,
little follow up for Groundhog's Day, a little
hell
joke.
yeah.
God, that's a good movie. And the other thing I was going to say is that Samhain, how it's pronounced, actually looks like Sam Hine, right?
Yeah, I remember the first time when I was doing the research, I read it and I was like, "Oh, it's Same Hein
Sam
or
Hine.
something like that." And then I
Uh
looked at the pronunciation. Oh, it's Samhain.
And with this, you see a lot of horror movies, and the one I'm thinking of is I think it's Trick or Treat, where the little boy, the murderer with the sucker
Pumpkinhead.
pumpkin,
Where
his actual name is Sam because Sam Himes Sawin.
oh,
Yeah, so it's like
clever.
clever movie writers, right?
Yeah.
So some connections there are just a lot of cool stuff. But yeah, I love the origins of Halloween and how it's been consumed and reiterated, and the notion that it is based on astrological occurrences where the Earth is in place with the sun, and yeah, that's not. Um, it's something that we all take part of if we want to or not because we're all on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, we love Halloween. Halloween is actually one of my favorites too. I don't celebrate it as hardcore as I used to in the past. I used to really be into costume design and dressing up and everything like that. But then I moved here and I don't have any friends, so all we do is hand out candy at this stage. But I still remember one of the more memorable Halloweens was actually over at your place. I remember.
I have to say that I am actually giving myself a point for being like Penny in this regard because I'm known to have a Halloween party or two.
Yeah, you have really good ones
I
too.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very festive, and the one that I'm talking about in particular was the first time that you did like the MythBusters thing, where you made that gel thing to simulate human flesh.
The ballistics
Yeah.
gel.
Yes, that was really cool.
That's I found a recipe, or actually a friend in a writing program gave me a recipe to make jello so firm that it was the texture of human flesh. And so I made this thing of ballistics gel and gave my friends various weapons, screwdrivers,
You even
knives,
put some, yeah, you
scissors.
even put bones, like some chicken bones or something on the inside to
Oh yeah.
simulate like the skeleton.
What it's like to stab somebody with bones inside them.
So anybody out there that's trying to throw a Halloween party, take notes.
This is oh man, that was a good time. I have to make that again. I think I tried making it again and I got the recipe wrong and the jello was a little less firm than it was supposed to be. Still a fun time, but it should be pretty firm to really get the experience of cutting somebody. All right, so yeah, I've added the point. Any more on Halloween?
Yeah, I guess I'll get into this before you go into your contest because it kind of goes hand in hand with this one. I was a little curious about Halloween by the numbers, like how much people spend, because looking ahead on this episode, it does not look like they sewed their Flash costumes. Howard made that proclamation of like, to the sewing machines. And so then it makes you think that they're going to like make their own, but all their costumes looked very store bought. So I was wondering about how much people actually spend on Halloween. So I found Halloween by the numbers on USA Today. This is based on a statistic back in September of 2021, and this is just in the United States. So $10 billion dollars total spent on costumes, candy, and decorations. And each year, the average consumer will spend about $102.74 each Halloween, whether it's candy, costumes, decorations. So every year it's like a lot of money.
It's a
I
business.
Yeah, I think I recycle my costume every year ever since I moved out here. Since I don't really have any friends to go to a party with, I just have a pajama onesie of Batman, and my wife has a pajama onesie of Care Bears. So we just recycle through that every time because it's the start of the cold weather, so it's nice and warm.
Oh
And then
yeah.
we just buy candy. I
Ah,
try to like buy like big bags at Costco because I try to give out like handfuls. I don't want to be stingy and give out like here's your little fun size piece, kid. Now
here's your
fuck off.
toothpaste. Here's an apple.
Yeah. I try to give handfuls out because we don't really do, we have a lot of kids in the neighborhood, but with COVID and everything like that, it's been a lot
Yeah.
slower. So whenever a kid does come up, I just try to give them as big of a handful as possible.
I remember when I was in Nebraska, I think I only got like two people, and it was usually the neighbors. like just the kids right next door. And it was always sad because I had Halloween parties and I was expecting kids. In fact, I think one year I actually went over because they forgot to come over. And I gave them candy. I go, I bought this for you. Take it.
I was expecting you to come by, and you disappointed me.
Have some chocolate. But I'd get like the king size candy bars and hand those out. And like I'd have a box of them. So afterwards, it was all for me. I was like, yes. Now I live in a suburb, and I get a lot more kids, so I can't quite afford to do it with the big candy bars. But I do agree that you should give a handful of candy out and have plenty just in case more kids come.
Yeah, I love Halloween, and to all the audience out there, I actually have my first child on the way, and
Woo!
his due date is actually October 29th. So there's this part of me that's like, push it off to have a Halloween baby. But my wife is very against it because she doesn't want his birthday to be overshadowed by Halloween, you know?
Mm,
But if it's around the holidays, like if it's around Halloween, where if it's like a day or two before or after, then they could combine it, like a
yeah.
birthday party with Halloween if they wanted to. But I totally get that. Like I don't want their birthday to be overshadowed by it. But it is kind of fun that it's going to be around that time, so we
That'd
get to
be,
dress up for their birthday.
yeah, have a even more of a reason to celebrate and throw a big thing shindig for Halloween. The boys are in the hallway, Penny leaves, and they all run to their sewing machines to get ready for the contest. And as you said, they all show up as the Flash to begin with.
Yep.
And they decide that they should have made some rules. And that they have to all go as somebody else. Nobody gets to be the Flash. And we get Leonard as Frodo, right? And then we get Raj as Thor, which we're going to talk about. Sheldon as the Doppler Effect. No way to know what that is from his costume, by the way. And Howard as, technically he's Robin Hood, but it was Peter Pan. It was Peter Pan.
Let's face it, it was Peter Pan. Before we jump ahead, rewinding back to the whole Flash parts, I
Mhm.
was wondering at this stage of time, I guess it was back in 2007, why the Flash? So I'm a pretty big comic book guy, at least I thought I was, but until I watched this show and everything, how they have some deep cuts here and there. But I was wondering, I was like, they all chose the Flash. So was the Flash that popular of a DC character at the time, or just overall? So I did a little bit more research. So this really isn't an IQ point or a half IQ point or anything. This was just fun. So so I found this article on Reddit that was quoting CBR.com. I was looking at the most popular DC characters of the time. So this was actually it was kind of funny how they actually did find a ranking on 2007. So in 2007, think of the DC characters. Do you want to guess who the most popular ones are?
Oh, I'm gonna have to say Superman and Batman are always up there.
Yep. Batman was number one. Number two, Superman. Number three, The Flash
Huh.
was why everyone dressed up. They were probably like, well, everyone's going to be Batman and Superman, so let's go with The Flash.
Yeah.
But specifically, Wally West.
Mm,
Number four is The Green Lantern, specifically Hal Jordan. And number five is The Joker.
Joker. We had that the Nolan movies coming out around that time, right?
Yeah, when was that?
I think
Was
that
it past 2007? Let's look this up really quick. It
yeah.
was the Dark Knight.
I think it was 2008. Yeah, 2008. So uh
So it'd been the year after that when everyone was dressed up like the Joker. I
that
dressed up like the Joker that year.
his popularity grew immensely.
Yeah. I'll try to find some pictures.
I think those are some Twitter posts.
Yep. Yeah, I was actually trying to find my best costume ever that I made. And I was trying to like dig it up and post on Twitter after this episode launches and everything like that, but I cannot find it for the life of me. Like I couldn't find any postings on Facebook. I switched from PC to Apple, so like the flash drive that I have, like I think it still works, but it's just not reading and registering on my Apple.
Mm-hmm.
But I dressed up as the Kool-Aid Man.
Nice. Oh
What I
man.
did was I actually did it in paper mache. So I actually blew up an entire huge balloon. Like it was probably about 4 feet diameter. It was huge. Like I found one of those balloons that just like got really big. So I blew it up and then I covered the whole thing in paper mache. And then you let it dry and then you pop the balloon and then that becomes the shell. So that
Oh.
became the shell of the pitcher, and then I painted it red, and I got to like jump inside of it, and I made like the pitcher top and everything like that. Oh man, that was so cool. That was like the top costume at the Halloween party that I went to that year. But I cannot find a picture. It's driving me crazy.
I I don't put all that much effort into costumes. I'm terrible with sewing and arts and crafts, so I'm like I know that's gonna happen. So I try to throw things together to make them like interesting. I My favorite that I went as was well, I called it a sexy pharaoh wizard, but it was actually Cleopatra. And I had to wear a bra, and it's great because I have that bra. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever need this again for another Halloween costume. But it's like every now and then somebody finds that bra in my stuff, and they're like, Ryan, you need to talk to us about anything? I'm like, not yet, no.
No, why do you?
No, no. Don't you have a bra? It's my safety bra. I don't know when I'll need it.
It's a courtesy bra for all the ladies that spend the night.
Yeah. I like to be the best host I can be.
Yeah. I also make omelets and serve orange juice.
Of course. Doesn't everybody
Mm,
do this?
yeah. Well, jumping ahead to ranking DC characters again, back to
Mhm.
the most recent one was 2021, and top five again. Number one, still Batman. Surprise, surprise. Number two, The Flash, but this time it's the Barry Allen version.
Huh.
Number three, Wonder Woman. Number four, Nightwing. Number five, Superman.
I'm surprised Harlequin isn't up in there.
I'm shocked too. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like she was great in the animated series. She's great in the comics, and even the new movies. I know Birds of Prey didn't get a lot of love, but Birds of Prey was fucking awesome.
I've just always loved her character. I've loved the Joker's always been fun, but having gestures and yeah, Harlequins. The costume itself has always been great. In the original animated version, she was always my favorite character because you never knew what she was going to do. I guess the same with the Joker, but for some reason she did it better.
Yeah, a little fun fact about Harley Quinn is that she's one of the very few characters that was born from the animated series and not from the comic books.
Wow.
She was so well liked and so well received in the animated series that they kept her around. She was actually only supposed to be like a one-off character.
I had no idea. But
And
yeah,
we
I
all
can see
learned, you
that.
know what? That's an IQ point then.
IQ point. That's
Add the
like
sound effect right here.
whatever it might be.
I'll pick something.
It's gonna be great, great. That's like Frasier out of Cheers, right? He was supposed to be like a one-off character, and he became kind of a hit. So they continued his character in the season, and when Cheers ended, they're like, let's see if we can make a spin-off with him, which then also became very successful.
Yeah, how many seasons was that? Like 7 or 8 or something or more? It was a long time. It was
It was
really long
long,
series.
and
I actually love that series too.
I've
Fucking
heard
love
some rumors
Frasier.
that they're like recreating it too, redoing some stuff with it. I'm not
With
sure what's
Kelsey
coming.
Grammer?
Yeah, that's what I've
Oh.
heard. It's rumors, so it's definitely not an IQ point, but maybe I keep my fingers crossed on that one. So my research with costume contests, or are we done with DC characters?
Yep,
Yep.
all done with DC characters. Yep.
My costume contest, it turns out that most contests have very different rules. Some have no rules, which once you know the rules, it seems like every costume contest should have some rules. But the main one was, making sure that nothing offensive was done. Nothing, mostly PG 13 ratings. You can see in more adult contests that maybe things could be R rated, but there seem to be issues with, what are they called? Props, having props, and mostly like no projectiles, either paintball guns or Nerf guns or something that could shoot an eye out type thing. That and one of them actually got into no animals as props. And I just imagine like people bringing in sheep or something and having a stampede of sheep in the middle of a costume contest. But yeah, I'm like, you know what? These are really good rules and rules that you should probably point out beforehand before you're having to deal with sheep excrement.
I was actually going to say that she was going to shit all over the place.
Amen. I think that's all I really got for that. Is that nothing's really consistent, but if you do have a costume party, probably make sure that people limit their props to nothing that has stuff coming out of them, either projectile or otherwise.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of an episode of The Office where they had the costume contest in the in the middle of the office day where they had a Halloween party. You watched The Office, right? But
No.
Wait, what?
I've never seen I've seen a couple episodes, but I've never watched The Office straight through.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this will be the final episode of Theoretical Nonsense. It was a pleasure, and goodbye.
Let's have a sound effect for the end.
All right, we'll have to address that later. We won't get into that right now, but what the fuck? But anyways, there was a costume contest on an episode of The Office, and they didn't clearly define the rules, so shit happens. Anyways, let's just move on before I have a heart attack.
I'm sorry, I've disappointed everybody today.
Well, okay, so the guys go in, and like you said, Leonard is Frodo, and Raj is Thor, and I wanted to make note of this, is that he was questioning on why he was Thor, and Raj does a good job sticking up for himself, that he like, what were you expecting? Me to pick an Indian god? That's racist. And good for him for standing up for himself.
I appreciated that too.
Again, an episode of The Office that happened with another character too. It's like, well, why are you that? Why not this other character? It's like, well, and it had to do with her race and everything like that. It's like, Halloween is a time to be whatever you want. So if you want to be whoever you want, be whoever you want. It's your time to just live out your fantasy, be who you want. You can be a pirate, you could be a fairy, you could be Ryan.
You could be me. Just pretend you've never seen The Office, and there you go.
Yep.
I like that he was Thor too, because like I initially thought he would, like, I would assume he would be Thor from Marvel, but right away I could tell he was the original version, Nordic version of Thor. Between being more rugged, and his hammer being brown versus silver, right? I think in Marvel it's always silver.
That I don't know, but I actually do have about a half an IQ point on this.
Share.
Did you do any
I didn't do anything on him. I did it on Doppler Effect.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm excited to hear that. But everybody out there, so this is actually a really good moment, because everyone go watch Thor: Love and Thunder in theaters now. Shameless plug. Not even getting paid. Great movie. I'm not gonna give you any spoilers or anything, but I actually just watched it last night. So that's why it kind of worked out perfect that the Halloween episode came out now. Mm-hmm. So, another side thing that I wanted to say is that Raj arrived at the apartment already dressed up as Thor, and he mentioned that his hammer got stuck in the bus. So, yes. Really gutsy, just wandering around in full costume. So, good job.
And it is Halloween, but still on Halloween, wearing your costume out and about is it takes bravery, it takes courage.
Especially if you're by yourself. If you're with a group of people, you're a little braver and whatever and everything. But when you're by yourself, you're just like, hi, I'm just wearing a costume. Don't look at me.
Stop looking.
All right, so here's my half IQ points. I don't know, I mean, maybe it is a full IQ point, but I looked into comic book Thor versus the Nordic god Thor. And this is according to ifanboy.com. So, in the comic, originally Thor was a regular guy named Donald Blake that just had the powers of Thor. But over time, the writers kept adding more and more of the Norse god's background into Blake's character and eventually just made him to be the Norse god. And Donald Blake became nothing more than a false identity. So that's where, in the comics, they actually did evolve him to be like the Nordic god, according to them. But the version is very different than what was written in history.
Yeah.
So Marvel Thor has golden locks and is clean shaven. The Nordic god has red hair and a beard. The Marvel Thor flies around using his hammer Mjolnir, where the Nordic god rode a chariot drawn by goats. Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder. The Marvel Thor was naturally super strong, whereas the Nordic god needed a magical belt and gloves to give him strength to wield Mjolnir to its full effect. Marvel Thor is a noble hero that any of us would feel safe around because he's very goofy, very fun, kind of just like a goofball and everything like that. Whereas the Nordic god is a fierce warrior with a violent temper who would revel in the slaughter of anyone that challenges him. So a lot of differences between the comic book version and what's written in history. So based off what Raj was dressed up as, he was, even though they claimed that he was the Nordic god, he was actually more mirroring the comic book character because his hair was blonde and he's clean shaven. He wasn't wearing any gloves at all, and he didn't have a belt.
Interesting. I was thinking the blonde hair was more like the Marvel one, but for some reason I was thinking he had like an animal skin on him, making it more rustic.
Oh, I need to go back and watch that. I didn't see that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
Nordic god would probably have animal pelts.
right? That's I'm making an assumption here and I probably shouldn't, but that and the hammer color was like, oh, I'm used to it being silver. But I'm also not certain of the original, but from what I've heard, the Nordic history has been erased greatly from history books due to European Roman Catholic Christian expansion. So, like, a lot of what we could have recorded has just been erased from history. So,
Yeah, also I did learn that the Viking history in I guess Viking history, they didn't have a written language for like a really long time. Everything was just stories. So as history kept going on, stories were altered or forgotten or lost.
uh, that's sad.
That's really sad. Yeah, like we could learn so much
I
and
like
know so much, but it was just kind of just lost.
Neil Gaiman has a book called I think it's called straight up Norse mythology, where he says since like so much history has been lost, he takes pride in being able to take creative liberties with versions of the stories and try to tell his best adaptations. And for anybody interested in like creative renditions or it's not modern, but yeah, modern tellings, I guess. Great book for Norse mythology. It gets into some Loki and Thor antics and craziness and fun, but also still with that more violent context versus the Marvel version, which is Thor's a fun guy to hang out with.
Yeah. Also, another thing that's different is that Loki and Thor aren't siblings in Norse mythology.
That's just a Marvel thing.
Yeah, just a Marvel thing.
Interesting.
And I have one more thing about Thor, and then we can move on.
Sure.
Another fun fact: Thursday is named after Thor. Thor's Day.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I know
So I
Saturday
did,
is after Saturn, right? So Thor is
yeah.
Thursday.
So I did some more research because I was trying to figure out what the other days of the week were named after and why they were named after them.
Yeah.
And thank you, Vikings. Wait. The the website's kind of weird. It's Viking DK. That's where I found this information on. But I did find some other websites that kind of confirmed this too.
Substantiated it.
So the days of the week were actually named after the planets. So Sunday for the sun, and so Sunday also Sol, but evolved into sun because it's the sun. So Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, the Nordic word for the moon is Mani or Mon. So Tuesday was named after Mars or the Nordic god Tyr or Tai, which evolved into Tuesday. Wednesday is named after Mercury or Odin, pronounced Woden. So Wednesday, Woden Day. Thursday for Thor, which is actually after Jupiter. Friday is named after Venus, the goddess of love, or Frigg, aka Freya. So Friday. And Saturday, like you said, is named after Saturn. So Saturday. So that's why we named our days after this. Like, that's why we call Sunday Sunday, Monday Monday.
Don't we have that with months as well a little bit? Like with months, it gets kind of weird because some of them are named after myths and planets and astrological bodies, and then like maybe not halfway through, but at a certain point, they get to be numbered, and that's why October, November, and December. December is 10, right? October is 8. Don't line up with being the 10th, 11th, and 12th months.
Yeah, I heard that October used to be the 8th month, but then something with the way that the planets revolve and what like a year actually is, they moved it.
Yeah. So things are always getting changed. Maybe in another 100 years, Friday won't be named after Freya. It'll be named after Loki Day or something.
Or Rye Day.
Rye Day.
Rob Day.
Rob Day. Rye Day's right before Rob Day. What are you doing for Rob Day? I don't know. I'll be drunk from Rye Day.
I did a little bit of research on Peter Pan too. I did a lot of research on costumes. So this happens before the Doppler effect. So I know you did research on the Doppler effect, but
go for it with Peter
Pan.
Go into, yeah.
So I feel like I'm dominating this, and you're supposed to be the one in charge of this episode. So
no
sorry
worries.
About that. So I looked into this because Raj makes a comment to Howard that he looked just like Kathy Rigby. So I was like, well, who is that? And why does he associate Peter Pan with Kathy Rigby? So I'm going to call this a half IQ point because it's not, I don't know how worth knowing this really is.
Oh, it's worth knowing if we talk about it.
So, Kathy Rigby played Peter Pan in 1974 in the Theater in the Round version of Peter Pan. She then reprised her role in 1990 for Broadway. She was nominated for a Tony Award and played the role again in 1998 and 1999, and then in 2004 and 2005, and then did some one-off plays in 2008 and then again in 2009. She took a break from Peter Pan for a bit, but reprised it again in 2011 through 2013 at the age of 60, and one more final time with a 15-day run in 2015. So Kathy Rigby played Peter Pan for half of her life, the majority of her life, because in 1974 her first role was she was 20 at the time, I think. So, for all intents and purposes, her life is revolved around Peter Pan. So that's Kathy Rigby.
Man, Peter Pan's just full of lies. It's not officially a boy, and he did actually grow old, or she grew old.
Yeah, lies and deception. Well, this got me interested in who else played Peter Pan. So I found this article on on etonline.com and the 17 other additional actors that played Peter Pan. So this article was in 2014. So between now and then, there may have been a couple more. So I kind of tried to do a little bit of research, but it doesn't look like there's anybody else that played beyond 2014 up until now. But according to IMDb, there's a new Peter Pan production, some sort of movie in production. So in 1924, Betty Bronson, the first cinematic appearance. 1950, Jean Arthur, the first Broadway adaptation of Peter Pan. 1953, Bobby Driscoll provided the voice of the animated movie for Disney.
The Disney version.
Yep. 1954, Mary Martin, Broadway adaptation, and she won a Tony. 1979, Sandy Duncan on Broadway. 1990, Jason Martin, the voice actor of the animated TV series. 1991, Robin Williams in Hook.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite. 2002, Blaine Weaver, who is the new voice of the Disney animated films in various theme parks. 2003, Rick Sparks did an indie film called Neverland. 2003 again, Jeremy Sumpter, which was a live-action feature film, Peter Pan. 2004, Kelly MacDonald, semi-biographical film, Finding Neverland. 2004, Freddie Highmore, in Finding Neverland again, played the boy that would inspire the author to write Peter Pan. 2011, Charlie Rowe. There was a sci-fi miniseries, Neverland. It was a reimagination of Peter Pan. 2013, Ben Whishaw, the movie called Peter and Alice. 2013 again, Robbie Kay played a villainous version of Peter Pan in Once Upon a Time. Great show. If you ever want like a fun, like family friendly, like reimagining of Disney characters, watch Once Upon a Time. 2014, Allison Williams, Peter Pan Live. And then 2015. Yeah, I got that wrong. So 2015, Levi Miller, the fantasy film with Hugh Jackman, Pan, where Hugh Jackman played Blackbeard.
I was going to say, for some reason, that one sticks out more than... Well, Hook always sticks out with Robin Williams, but Pan with Hugh Jackman really sticks out, too.
I never actually watched that. Did you?
I did. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I compare everything to Hook, and Hook was just so fantastic. Maybe I just watched it at a point in my life where it stuck with me, but man, I loved Hook.
I think I first watched Hook when I was around like 6 or 7. I was really young when I watched it, but it still is fantastic. Oh, if you haven't watched Hook, watch Hook. Robin Williams is so amazing at it.
Yeah, and Dustin Hoffman as Hook,
Captain
right?
Hook.
Yeah, Captain Hook. Oh, wow. It's great.
Yeah, and Rufio. Gotta love Rufio.
Yeah, he was, I remember me and my friends all pretending we were Rufio as kids. Like, oh, I want to be cool.
Yeah. What sticks out to me is like all the dinner scenes in Neverland with the kids, how they're playing it at like how they have to use their imagination to eat and everything. And it was funny because like once all the food came up, it looked like just frosting.
Yeah.
And I want that.
I want that in my life. I need more of that in my life.
I need more frosting. Just frosting everywhere.
Yeah. You come into my house and it's just everything's covered in frosting. Brian, you have a problem. No.
Well, no, it's just Rite A.
It's Rite A. Use your imagination.
All right, that's all I have on Peter Pan.
Oh, hi. I probably should have done a little bit into Robin Hood, but I didn't. So maybe next time. But
another time.
I did Doppler Effect. And would you have had any idea Sheldon's costume was Doppler Effect? It had a bunch of lines that kind of curved in and out.
No. And I looked into this because Sheldon does make a comment later that since nobody actually knows what the Doppler Effect is, that it was an illustration of the poor American education. and it got me to research when you actually do learn about the Doppler effect, and it's high school physics.
High school physics.
And
Man.
if I did, it was just so long ago.
It this is something that stuck with me, and I thought it was interesting that they were joking so many people didn't know it because, I mean, I don't know it extensively, but I am very well aware of this phrase. You get things like with weather, maybe this is part of it growing up in Kansas, and living in Nebraska, that the Doppler radar used waves to see how fast storms are moving in, and using some of that science and then being taught, oh, Doppler goes with Doppler effect, and being told what that was.
Okay, so whenever you're listening to the weather report and they mention the Doppler radar and everything like that, this is what they're referring to.
It's very similar, yeah, because his Sheldon's reference is all about sound waves, and every time he goes woo 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 or whatever he does, right, to give hints, uh, is sound, but it works with all sorts of waves. It works with water waves, it works with light waves, it works with frequencies, yeah, all sorts of waves.
Yeah,
And
because Raj even makes a comment that Sheldon does not sound nor light, yet he's obviously the Doppler effect.
exactly. He is not sound nor light, but he is the Doppler effect. Because it's Halloween and you can be whatever you want to be.
Yep.
But yeah, I looked up, I guess the other thing was in college astronomy, which I loved. I only did intro to astronomy, but I loved it. Taught me about how this is used with astronomy, because since light is technically a wave, if the stars we observe are moving towards us, their light will be bluer because shorter frequencies, as they're moving and coming closer, the wavelengths are shorter, causing them to be bluer, to have a blue shift. Versus moving away, it causes the waves to stretch out and be redder. And this is partially what builds into the theory that the universe is expanding right now, is the way we can observe stars and their colors and how their waves are shifting. But for
So
physicsclassroom.com, I looked up some of this and it does explain quite a bit of it, probably better than I ever will. But what Sheldon does, mostly with his hints, is the notion that sound is a wave. And so when a loud sound is coming towards you, um, it's going to be kind of condensed and sound higher frequency than it would if it's standing still. When it's moving away from you, the wavelength gets stretched out and will be a lower frequency. And so you can think of it as, if I were to throw a baseball while driving a car, the baseball, let's say I can throw a baseball at, I'm not much of a player, 5 miles per hour, and I'm driving at 20 miles per hour. That baseball is actually going to be going 25 miles per hour. When I throw it going past you, it's actually going to be going slower because it's moving away from you. So that's the way I look at it. But it's some fun science facts and pretty cool that it's not just sound, that we can actually see it happening too.
so how knowing what you know about the Doppler effect, how accurate would you say that Sheldon's costume is?
Oh, I think it's very abstract because how we process waves is very confusing. But I like it because what you see is he has like lines kind of curve from one side, kind of straighten out, and then curve to the other side. So technically, he's moving towards the center, straightening out, and then moving away. And I would say
And
that makes sense.
one thing that I was wondering about his costume, I don't know if it was there intentionally, but on his chest he had a button, and I wasn't sure if that was meant to be like the starting point of the wave.
I could not figure that out either, and I'm not sure. Maybe that was supposed to be the origin of the wave, but or maybe that's the point of observation. I was taking that as the point of observation, but I did not find out what that represented.
Or maybe it's just a button
Maybe
to
it's just a button.
clasp his shirt.
It was for style.
Yep.
So yeah, they end up going to the party. Leonard says to Sheldon, "Please don't embarrass me. I know I'm I have a hard time enough." And Sheldon's like, "Okay," but they get to the party at 7:05 and apologize for being late.
Yep, and we also learned that Leonard's middle name is Leaky.
Leaky. Which has nothing to do. Doesn't he say for having accidents, right?
Yep. Yep, so they're at the party. Sheldon thinks it's going to suck because there's no parade.
There's no parade. There's no real competition either. Nothing to win. Although I have to say really quickly, too, that I did add a point to being Penny or somebody else because I'm never on time for parties. I like to be fashionably late because, well, I'm always usually running late for anything, but it takes me longer to get ready than I ever expect. So, and I also like to get there and not have any awkward moments like they're having where they sit and they're just kind of alone sitting there. I like to know people are there, already have a drink or two in them, and then I'm not so awkward when I do get there. So I'm never on time for parties.
It's also you wait till everybody gets slightly lubricated a little bit, and the moment you walk in, everybody cheers your name.
Yes. Ride A, Ride A.
Ride A. All right, well, we fast forward, and I made note of all the costumes that we saw. And realistically, they were all generic characters or generic types of costumes just because they didn't want to pay any copyright
fees.
Yeah. So I saw a knight, bunny, what looked like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, a ladybug, mermaid, football player, fireman, a sexy nurse, according to Howard, a pirate, and a wizard.
Of course, Penny was a cat, right?
Yep.
Just a generic cat, not even Catwoman, generic cat.
But I looked into what the hot costumes I looked at what the hot costumes were of 2007. And according to ktnv.com, the most popular Halloween costumes of 2007 are the Burger King King, a Spartan warrior of 300, Shrek, Princess Fiona, and Jack Sparrow.
Huh. That makes a lot of sense. Well, actually, the Burger King one doesn't, but
that was like around the time of the resurgence of the new commercials from Burger King, how they had like the big prosthetic head of the king and everything like that. So that was becoming a thing. So I do remember that, but I don't remember people actually like going full on like Burger King head thing. It was more about like, I got the crown from Burger King and I'm gonna wear like the robes and everything like that.
I was gonna say I do remember the commercials, so definitely a resurgence there. That makes more sense. But why people would attach to that, who knows? It's a mystery. Yeah. It's a mystery. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they Howard decides to hit on the nurse, right?
Yep. He says that he's going to use the mirror technique.
Mirror technique. Did you do research on this one?
I did.
You did?
Did you?
I did too. I want to see what you came up with first because I got.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
All right, I have a lot on this one. Holy shit!
I'll go ahead and mirror you. Ha
All right. So Howard mentions the mirror technique, and I researched if this is a real thing. So he also mentions that he got it from a show on VH1. And I remember this show because I actually saw a few episodes at the time, and I actually the book was like a really big thing for a while. But this just makes so much sense on Howard. Like, if you actually really think about how Howard acts and everything like that, since he doesn't have a father figure in his life, which I think they mentioned hopefully I didn't spoil that, but he doesn't have a father figure, or at least a good one,
I don't
in
recall,
his
but I'm
life.
gonna assume that they have mentioned it.
But yeah, so it makes so much sense that he's relying on these pickup artist books and TV show to like learn about women. And some of it is valid, most of it isn't.
What was the TV show called?
I think it was called the Pickup
The
Artist,
Pickup Artist?
and the original release of this was August 2007. So this is actually relevant to the times of the show because this episode came out in October of 2007. So this is actually a really fresh show on there. And the show follows the main pickup artist, Eric von Markovic, also known as Mystery. This must have come like because there was a hit book before this called The Game by Neil Strauss, also known as Style. And I actually own this book.
I own the audiobook, the abridged version.
Like I said, like this was a big thing in the mid 2000s where it was like, oh, let's learn how to pick up girls, like all this science and everything like that, like on biology and how to act towards women and what women want and everything like that. But most of it is like I would imagine some of it does. I didn't read the whole book. I got through part of it and everything like that. And this TV show only lasted 2 seasons. I wonder why. But yeah, there is some good stuff, but there's a lot of shitty things in there too that you really just shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Like, don't neg people. Don't do that kind of stuff. It's kind of bullshit.
The things that I appreciated about it, and again, I read the abridged or listened to the abridged version, um, which probably made a big deal, but mattered a lot. I mean, a lot of it had to do with building your own self confidence and being able to approach a person and strike up a conversation. And I know they were talking about learning magic to be able to say, hey, you want to see a magic trick? Because that gives you confidence, and that confidence goes over well and starts a conversation pretty naturally, just like, not necessarily as hitting on somebody, but as having fun and having a discussion, getting to know someone. Um, but also, the thing I remember the most about the book, The Game, that I listened to wasn't necessarily the advice it gave, but kind of this surreal lifestyle where these pickup artists like got a house and lived together and tried to make this work as a lifestyle. And it was kind of creepy because, it's just like kind of for not maybe regular, but average guys who have quirks and are weird just like us, trying to live together, and people are coming and living with them. And I think at one point, Kurt Cobain's wife,
Courtney Love.
Courtney Love, I believe, comes and just lives with them for a while, and it's just this random stuff of people circling in and out, and like, wow. So just for that, like, it's an interesting book. Like, it's does have a lot of, some interesting advice, bad advice, but also like the world's a weird place, and it's interesting for that.
I had never made it that far in the book. I didn't realize that Courtney Love lived with them for like a little bit.
Right. And has some interesting conversations with her parental rights and her kids. So it's interesting, but I wonder how much was actually cut out for the abridged version.
So the mirror technique, according to scienceofpeople.com, mirroring, also known as mimicking or Gauch's reaction, is a non-verbal technique where a person copies the body language, vocal qualities, or attitude of another person. It is usually done subconsciously and can indicate interest or even attraction. A 2009 study showed that men on speed dating that did mirroring were evaluated more favorably. So, mirroring. There's nonverbal. So, there's fronting, there's eye contact, and the triple nod. So, fronting is standing in front of of another person, shoulders squared directly at them. This shows them that you're giving them your full attention. Eye contact. You want to give eye contact because it shows interest and You don't want to do too much of it, but you don't want to do too little. Because if you're not giving enough, it shows disinterest. If you show too much, it's just creepy.
And this stings for people with like Asperger's or on the autism spectrum. They're known for being unable to make eye contact. And so people think you're not interested when really it's just you feel awkward making eye contact. So I've heard advice that if you ever want to work on this and feel awkward making eye contact, try looking at somebody's forehead or their nose, and it's close enough that they think you're making eye contact and you don't have to feel weird about
Yep.
it.
Then there's the triple nod. The triple nod does two important things. First, research shows that when you do the triple nod, the other person will speak 3 to 4 times longer, making them feel listened to and important. And second, when you nod, you're basically agreeing with what the other person is saying, and that builds what scientists call a yes set. And a yes set is like when a salesperson asks you a couple of simple questions, like, is it still June? Or it sure is warm today, isn't it? You say yes, even if only in your mind. And research shows that once you start saying yes, the more likely it is that you will continue to do so. Yes sets build connections. So when you nod, you build your own yes set and further strengthen the connection that you're making. So as you continuously say yes, it makes the person that you're talking to or the person that you're hitting on or something like more likely to say yes.
And that's what this is all about, is building cooperation and kinship. And all this mimicking, the nodding makes them feel like they're being listened to, understood, and that they're gaining a friend or a companion of some sort to get along with.
Yep. And now we move on into the verbal
Verbal.
side of mirroring. So matching their pace and volume, cadence, and word choice. If they're super fast talker and loud, increase your volume and animation. Cadence, which is the way that your voice flows. Research has shown that we prefer voices that sound like our own. So try mimicking the flows and pauses of the other person's voice. Then there's word choice. You choose similar words, but doing it subtly. So a great example, and I talked about this earlier, The Office. There was a great example of the mirror technique in The Office. It was season 3 when Andy meets Michael for the first time. So when a new employee meets the boss for the first time, the employee wants to win favor of the boss, and he does it by mirroring him. So he does it by kind of matching his voice, his volume, and his word choice. So if anybody wants to see a great example of that, look for that episode. I see you're giving me lots of eye contact right now.
Lots. But I'm not looking at your eyes.
Oh. Did you find anything else on mirroring?
um, I found a couple things. I found where was it? Verbal technique, vocals, attitude, like you said, cadence, matching their general energy. And that this all stems from, I got this from scienceofpeople.com. We're hardwired for cooperation, because when we work together, that means more food, that we produce more and we survive better. Um, but I also found that if you know this is happening, that you can test it out. And you can test it out by doing little gestures, like unrelated gestures, going to itch your nose. And if somebody does like a similar movement right after you do that, they are either consciously or subconsciously mirroring you, supposedly. However, I kind of wonder, like, in my mind, if somebody were to go and like itch their mouth or wipe their mouth, like it would make me think subconsciously, like, oh my goodness, I have food on my face. And then I'd probably start wiping my mouth, like, I have to get this food off. Because I just go ahead and assume that like every little minute detail like that suggests something's wrong with me. Much like if somebody offers you a mint or gum, my theory on this is you always take it because that might be their polite way of saying you have bad breath. You might not. They might just be being nice. But in case you do, you always take it.
That actually goes into some things that I learned about just manners in general.
Mm,
Like if you go visit somebody or if you're hanging out with someone, if somebody offers you something, just take it.
just take it.
Because I know you're trying to be polite and not take it. Like, oh, I can make you something, or would you like a drink or something like that? Like by denying it can be a sign of rudeness.
It's like, would you like my dick in a box? No, no, I don't want it. You're being rude now, Rob.
Ryan, remember manners.
Remember, take my box. Okay.
People, please don't put your dick in the box.
Please don't. Saturday Night Live taught us this. Don't do
Yeah.
it. I've also read that you don't want to overdo both trying to mirror and trying to test because by overdoing it, things get awkward. People start to recognize it, and it becomes kind of not surreal, but
Creepy.
creepy. Yeah, awkward. Yeah, not good. It's bad. So
It does take, like, mirroring does seem like it takes a lot of practice.
yeah, and Howard does not have that down, so he's kind of stumbling on himself, and
Yeah, he was very obvious
it's
during
very
the whole
obvious.
time.
Yeah.
The moment she crosses her arms, he like just looked her up and down, like, "Yep, I'm gonna cross my arms now too."
It doesn't work out, but
He did have he had such a great pickup. I thought this was actually a great pickup line that he did. Hey, if that's a working stethoscope, you should hear my heart skip a beat. That's really good. Go on.
that's it actually really is. I just read a book like I think I finished it last week. It's a book of short stories called Dangers of Smoking in Bed, and just like completely over the top scary stories. And one of them is about a woman who has a sexual fetish for people who have heart complications and are like basically dying, and she gets together with a guy who has a lot of heart complications who has a fetish for people who are interested in his complications, and they strike up a very unhealthy relationship. So when he said that, I'm like, this is going bad places. But yeah, I admit it's a good pickup line. It's just I was huh. And he does admit that he does have a heart problem, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
idiopathic arrhythmia. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's he has transient idiopathic arrhythmia.
So it's it does get kind of creepy, but it was a good pick up line. I admit
Yeah,
that.
I thought so. Like if I feel like if someone told me that the moment that they saw me that their heart skipped a beat, I'd be like, oh,
Oh, that's sweet.
oh, that's nice.
Hey, Rob, my heart skipped a beat when I first saw you.
All right, let's go celebrate Rye Day.
Rye Day time.
Did you do any research on transient idiopathic arrhythmia?
Oh, I didn't.
All right,
All
then.
yours.
Here we go. According to WalshMedicalMedia.com, so transient idiopathic arrhythmia means short-term spontaneous irregular heartbeats. Arrhythmia is the medical condition where the cardiac electrical impulses managing the heartbeats do not work properly, resulting in either the heartbeat to move too slow or too fast, or just irregular. Idiopathic means of unknown cause, and Howard says it's transient, so it means that it's for a short term. So he has short term irregular heartbeats.
So it comes and goes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm gonna call that an IQ point.
IQ point.
Yep, that's medical stuff.
Oh,
you just
yeah.
learned something.
But does it ever come back? No, no spoilers. Don't tell me what happens with his heart.
Here's a good sound effect right now. Beer o'clock.
So now we well, two things happen. One, they mentioned that everybody keeps saying, "How wasted am I?" Which is important because a girl sits down next to Raj and says that exact line.
Yep, the cutest little ladybug sits next to Raj, which confirms Sheldon's research.
Yes, and it's great because he still can't talk to women. And I think he even mentioned some very feminine looking men. So,
Yep.
but she does the talking for him, and yeah, that becomes a side story for the episode.
Yep.
And then
And
Penny's.
Leonard be
Oh, go for
Oh, I
it.
was gonna say I was gonna say Leonard becomes the most relatable character ever that he's having a hard time socializing at a party.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have that a lot.
Oh, I am terrible. I always seem to break in at odd points or like, hi, I'm Ryan, like in the middle of somebody talking about mourning a loved one or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, awkward. I did not take a hint.
Yeah.
Uh, and Penny's ex shows up.
Kurt arrives dressed as Tarzan.
Another animal skin wrapped around his loins.
You know what? With a body like that, I'd probably dress up the same way.
Seriously, I cannot complain about that body. Wow.
Yep. Muscles everywhere.
Meanwhile, I feel again like Leonard, being the short little hobbit.
Leonard talks himself up and says that Kurt's physicality was attractive in the past, but this is the new age. This is the age of the brain, and that in this world, Leonard and Sheldon are now the alpha males.
And here we get into some IQ point talking, right? I want to start off with a great little video by collegehumor.com, part of the series Adam Ruins Everything. And his video is called Alpha Males Don't Exist. And he goes into the history of the research done that originally suggested that in wolf packs, certain wolves were more aggressive and took leads over other wolves in the pack. This led people to kind of think, oh, if I'm more aggressive, if I'm stronger, people will see me as the leader and the strongest wolf of the pack, and everybody will like me the most. I'll be the best. Later on, research came out that the researcher got it wrong. It wasn't that one wolf was stronger and raised them above the rest of the pack. It had to do with parents, that parents were stronger together and stood up to raise their kids more effectively, and that anybody who basically goes with this alpha male idea is getting the notion wrong that alpha males don't actually exist, that each social interaction provides a different point for person, not male or female, to demonstrate their skills as a leader, as somebody who is strong and efficient to look up to. And this gets interesting because I was looking at, what was the website? It was the Greater Good magazine at berkeley.edu, the article Myth of the Alpha Male. And again, definition basically comes down to we see alpha male as the real essential definition of being masculine and beta as being weak. Yet this is problematic, and I think the quote goes around, or paraphrasing a little bit, the problem with alpha male is it greatly simplifies the multidimensionality of masculinity and grossly underestimates what a man can become. Also, doesn't get into the heart of what women actually want. That it's making assumptions based on stereotypes for women. So it's basically offensive for everybody to say, I'm an alpha male or he's the alpha male. But what I thought was interesting was it got into some discussion of descriptors, and that descriptions for individuals can change based upon subjectivity. And so usually we think of alpha male as dominant and beta as non dominant. However, if we start trying to use synonyms for these words, dominant can mean confident, and we all know, oh, confident is great. And we can see why confident is something that is attractive in a partner. However, dominant can also be compared to being aggressive. And if somebody's saying, okay, this person, your date, your match is very aggressive, that may not be attractive. So we can see how kind of slight different definitions change up if this is working. Same with non-dominant, that we could see non-dominant as easygoing, or we could see it as submissive. And submissive isn't necessarily positive, but easygoing is usually considered, we're spinning it in our favor. And it might be something that a partner might actually like or others look up to. Um, and again, different groups make different social statuses. Notion of, I think the website mentioned the leader of a CEO might seem like a strong, powerful alpha male leader when he's running a powerful company. But if he gets in trouble and goes to jail, the situation has changed, and he's probably not going to be the same alpha male he was above his company. Um, so what it gets down to is the website mentions research saying being prestigious and authentic is better than forcing your dominance. And that although alpha male is not really a thing, that if you are confident and you show yourself and you try to be yourself and be authentic, it's going to turn out better for you. So that's the research I did on alpha male. I am very fascinated with these stereotypical character types, tropes.
The audience can't see this, but I'm giving Ryan the 3 nods.
Oh yeah, so much
Yes,
mirroring.
I agree.
He agrees.
Yes.
His shirt's also off, guys.
But yeah, that's actually a really good point. It's all about definitions and perspective. Like, it's like you were saying, like, there's different ways to interpret the actions. How aggressive can be a good thing, but it can be a very negative thing depending how you look at it. And it reminds me of this interview that I listened to. It was on Smartless. I don't know if you ever heard that podcast.
I don't think
It's
so.
it's an interview one where 3 celebrities interview a friend of theirs. So it's Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett. And they did an episode where they brought in Dak, uh, Dak Shepard, and he's married to Kristen Bell. And Dak has a history outside of the film industry about being aggressive and being the dominant one and protecting his family and stuff like that. And he used a lot of violence in the past. And it's all perspective. In his perspective, he was the alpha male where he wanted to use violence to protect his family. But then when he actually asked his wife about that, she hates that he does that because I know you think that you're making me feel safe, but when you get that way, I don't feel safe at all. So that's where it's like that toxic masculinity kind of is at
Absolutely.
play.
Yeah.
And that's what the alpha male sounds like it is. It's very toxic.
Interesting. I know Dak Shepard, I believe, from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He was like a guest star in an episode or two where he joins well, basically they start a cult and force some guys into the cult. And so, he's usually, I know him from humorous shows. It's interesting that he saw himself as more violent to be the protector in his actual family history.
Yeah, you don't really like when you see his roles, you don't really expect that because he's like a very funny guy. But if you actually like take a step back and look at him, he's a pretty big dude.
Uh-huh. Yes, he is, definitely. Ah, weird. But yeah, it's definitely I think that's interesting, Kristen Bell. And that goes with this episode too, that Kristen Bell did not feel safe when he gets like that. And in this case, when they go talk to Penny's boyfriend, he gets kind of protective, right? And she doesn't like how
Yeah.
he acts. He gets physical.
Nope. Yeah. Yeah, they kind of go. Kurt and Leonard started going into like a little bit of a verbal battle with each other, where they're both trying to establish dominance in front of Penny
And you
to
mentioned
become that alpha male.
this too, that basically Leonard is trying to show that Kurt has no intellect, right? That he's not very intelligent. And Sheldon even mentions with his costume that Kurt thinks he's a zebra and mentions that he was a child left behind.
Yep.
Right? I like that
Really
line.
big. That was a great joke. If anybody doesn't remember that, in the mid 2000s, there was the No Child Left Behind Act.
Yeah, I did a little research. This is like one of my half IQ points. That 2001, it was the notion that nationally schools would be judged upon how their kids did, how their students did, and students, I should say, would be given standardized tests. And I hate standardized tests. I hate tests. I hate grading systems. I'm a big advocate for pass fail systems, and that grading or testing should be eliminated. I don't have the answers for everything, but I myself have test anxiety, and I can know a subject inside and out. And as soon as you set me down and say you have 10 minutes to take a test, I question everything and fall apart. It's weird.
So
So,
you believe that on a personal level, but I don't know if you want to cut this part out of the podcast, but do you believe that as a professional in the education industry?
yes, I would say as a professional in the education industry, I would support eliminating tests. I don't have the answers on. I know different subjects require different things, and I'm not a professional in other subjects other than English. But as far as writing goes, um, with written essay exams, students have usually like 30 minutes to an hour to write an essay. And professional writers will tell you that writing is in the rewriting, that first drafts are garbage. Now, I'm going to say straight up the quote is first drafts are shit, and that rewriting is what makes them gold. And it takes time to rewrite. And having 30 minutes to an hour is not enough time to step away, take a break, and come back and make it what it is. And if we ask anybody to write one draft of something, even if they're Stephen King or Neil Gaiman, it's not going to be great. It's probably going to be better than anything I can do, but it's still not going to be their best work. And expecting students to somehow demonstrate this, I think it's unfair and definitely not setting us up for what students are capable of and pushing us to the best of our abilities. So yeah, that's my whole diatribe on
Okay.
test. Cut out anything that doesn't work with that. But yeah, so the problem was this got criticized heavily because, well, standardized tests, a lot of people do have problems with them, but it also giving schools financial aid or finances based upon their outcomes from standardized tests is just, well, it does come down to systemic racism, right? The notion of poverty stricken areas, which are usually minority areas, are the ones who do not have the finances already. Rich neighborhoods that are usually white neighborhoods usually are more affluent and have more money going to their schools. With more money, the schools can afford better teachers, better resources. When I got out of high school, my high school, I guess, decided to give everybody a laptop. I'm like, if I had a free laptop, I probably would have learned a lot more. So the notion is, with more resources, you can teach more. You have a better quality of education, which means that if the standardized tests are showing the outcomes of just these limited resources or lots of resources, they're going to be biased from the very get go and saying, okay, we're just going to give more resources to the people who had more resources already. The whole system's flawed.
Yeah, I remember that was a really hot topic in the early 2000s about like the whole debate about resources in a school, where people were trying to say like they didn't like schools don't need to have a computer access for success. And these days that's bullshit.
You
You have to have it.
absolutely,
You
yeah.
have to learn how to type. You have to know how Windows works or Apple works and all these systems and everything like that. You have to, like, that's the future. Like, that is like, if you don't have that, then that student is now behind when they get a job, or if they're trying to get a job, and if they're not affluent in like Excel or Word or something or PowerPoint, they're going to be behind and they're not going to get that job.
Yeah,
Because no job wants to go through the training. They expect their employee to already have that skills and knowledge.
exactly. It's a new form of literacy that's expected. And so in 2015, this got changed from a federal level to a state level. So states are handling it individually. There is still some demand put on standardized tests, but yeah, the No Child Left Behind uh, stance kind of was seen as, well, I see it as a failure, and it did kind of fall apart. But it makes it that much funnier because it does show that some children were left behind, including Kurt.
He was left behind.
Kurt was left behind.
Because he couldn't spell something. What couldn't he spell? Confrontation.
Confrontation. Confrontation. And he
Here's
oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'll let you go. I was gonna deviate to something completely different, but I'll let you go.
Just that they were talking about Kurt showing animalistic puffery, the notion of him kind of showing off his strength and his muscles, and he took it as being a puffed up animal and took offense to that, and that became the whole issue. And he does end up picking up Leonard. Doesn't physically attack him, assault him, but he does pick him up to show his dominance.
Technically, that is assault.
That is, yeah, putting your hands on
In
somebody.
the legal world, that actually is assault. So he's assault. At this point, Kurt has assaulted Leonard multiple times.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's true. And I like this. This is where I give my 1 point for being Sheldon for the episode. Is he goes, I support you, but in a physical confrontation, I am useless.
Hey, really quick, Homo habilis discovering his opposable thumb says what?
He goes, what?
You're supposed to say what?
What?
Damn it. Well, anyways, I was going to revert back to Leonard's costume as Frodo.
Yes,
he says that he is a hobbit, a mortal halfling inhabitant of Middle Earth, and elves are immortal tall warriors. So Kurt makes a really good point. Why would you want to be a hobbit then?
That is a really good point.
And this kind of goes into like a current event right now. Are you up to date with Rings of Power? Not that it's out right now, but like all the news and everything that's coming out.
Just vaguely aware of it.
Are you a Tolkien fan? We kind of talked about this last time.
I'm a pretty big Tolkien fan.
You gonna watch it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to watch like the trailers and stuff like that. But yeah, looks interesting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't remember if we talked about this when we were playing Diablo, or did we talk about this last time? But I know we kind of talked about this before.
I think it was during Diablo, but I'm not sure.
Okay, it might have been. Yeah, we were talking about like people are shitting all over Rings of Power.
Yeah,
like they're shitting all over it. Like the major Tolkien fans are hating it. They watched the trailer. Like some of the YouTube clips of like the videos and everything have so many dislikes that they're actually pulling it off of YouTube.
That's like didn't you say it's because it's technically content that Tolkien did not write?
Yes. So based off this, a lot of the videos I watched on YouTube, all the people that talk about why they don't like it, it's because like it's very inaccurate to Tolkien's writing. Like they showed the dwarf queen, whereas in Tolkien's writing, they couldn't tell the difference between a male versus a female dwarf because they all have beards.
Yeah.
Whereas the dwarf queen that they showed didn't have a beard. She was very feminine. elves are known to having longer hair because they just grow it out. That's
Yeah.
what elves do, male or female. They showed a short-haired elf. Like it's like little nitpicking things like that, that why people are like really hating on it.
That's sad. I wanna give it, fair just, fair try, but that is kind of weird that they're changing up the world building that Tolkien did. The beard for the female dwarves, that's pretty. I don't know. I considered that pretty essential. And the long hair for elves, like that's part of it, right?
Yeah, like these things, as minute as they are very essential to the world of Middle Earth.
You're gonna like go online and find like some guy named Ryday really criticizing these videos. Like Ryday, why does this keep appearing? Who is this guy?
Hashtag Ride.
Hashtag Ryday.
Yeah, and also like the Galadriel stuff. Galadriel was the elf, like sorceress in the Lord of the Rings series, whereas they're showing a younger version of her as like a warrior and everything like that. So I don't think Tolkien wrote about Galadriel as that, but they're kind of showing her in like a different light and everything like that. And like the nerds are having an uproar about that too.
uh,
I really don't care because I think it's pretty badass to have a female warrior. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of all for it.
I want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did give a point to Sheldon. Well, it's actually a half point and then a half point in a little bit because he says he's physically useless in a confrontation. I think that's exaggerating, maybe not physically completely useless, but for the most part, I can't throw a baseball. I don't know how to throw a punch. I was in Taekwondo as a kid, but that's basically learning how to walk for me. Like I have very bad, poor hand-eye coordination. But later on, he does bring Leonard T to make him feel better. And I'm like, that's something I do. I try to make people feel better. Say, can I get you something? But I also feel awkward about it because he brings the tea and he's like, they're there, and then like just stands there awkwardly. So total Sheldon moment, total me.
So I think that this might be the first time that we see this, that Sheldon brings somebody a hot beverage when they are in turmoil.
And he even mentions, he's like, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Bring
Yep.
somebody a hot beverage. I like that. But yeah, then so they're back at home and Sheldon brings Leonard tea and Penny ends up coming over. And this is like the big part of the episode, right? Because she sits down and kisses him.
Yep. This is the climax of the episode.
Yeah,
But bum.
I like that he says how much is this of this is because you're drunk and angry, and she admits that part of it. And I like as far as consent goes, and although he does really like this, the prestigious, the moral, the ethical thing to do is say this isn't how he wants to achieve or to gain a relationship with her, that this is not appropriate.
This really did show a lot of moral decency of Leonard, that he didn't want to take advantage of her and he wanted to win her love or achieve her love in a more like upstanding way.
A long lasting way, uh, that this might be fleeting, right? But I like because it does show that she's interested in him. We've had some
Yeah.
hints, but this is even if she is drunk and angry, there is some interest.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way. Like I put myself into Leonard's shoes. Like if this ever happened to me, if I was really into someone and they were making a pass at me just out of revenge, then I would feel really shitty about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, I don't want you to like, I want you to love me. I don't want you to just use me as a way to get back at your ex.
I'm thinking of that movie. Was it Superbad, where Jonah Hill says we could be those mistakes? Like, and
He was embracing it.
yeah, and in theory, like that's great, but when you start thinking of it, it's not as great as it sounds.
Yeah.
It starts to hurt you right in the heart, in the feels.
Yeah.
And then
And yeah, so then she says like, why can't all guys be like you?
yeah.
Because if all guys were like me, then the human race wouldn't survive. Which I think is my favorite quote of the episode.
That is a great quote of the episode. The human
Yeah.
race wouldn't survive. But he does have a comeback because she gives him a little peck as she's leaving, and Kurt sees that, and he goes, "That's how we roll in the Shire."
Yep, and quickly shuts the door and locks that.
Yeah. And we get to later, and Howard is looking for Raj.
Yep.
And can't find
him.
But turns out that he's in bed with the girl who's How Drunk Am I girl, right? The ladybug. Dude. And she mentions he's a great listener because he has not said a word the whole time.
He's gentle, passionate, and such a great listener.
Great. I love that.
So good for Raj.
Good for Raj.
Yeah. As long as it was consensual. Which it sounded like.
Yeah, I think they were both consenting on that.
Yeah.
He had some mirroring body language to suggest it wasn't vocal language, but the body language and mirroring showed.
Yep. And that was it.
Woo-hoo!
That was the Middle Earth paradigm. We did it.
We did it. Nice job.
How'd you like this overall?
I like this one. Just a lot of stuff that I found very interesting, and we had some very great conversations about it, right?
Yeah, like this was like I was saying, I love this episode because I love a seasonal episode. I love festivities. Halloween episodes, any sitcom is great.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing the costumes, seeing like the party and everything like that. It's great.
And seeing how they act in
a social situation.
Yeah, kind of like a not quite universal, but very, very large largely understood social situation. Because in other TV shows, we have the same social situations, just unique to those characters. In this case, how are they interacting at this party?
So I forgot to ask you, or I think you kind of brought it up, but what's the best costume that you've ever done? I think you mentioned it earlier.
I'm not sure. I feel like my costumes are always pretty lacking. I think my favorite actually was back in elementary school. My mom made me a werewolf, and I love dogs. I love werewolves, and I had these big furry claws, and they were nice and warm when it was cold when I was trick or treating. So that sticks with me.
You're a wolf. Were you the alpha male?
I was not. You're
just a beta.
Beta werewolf.
I know Halloween's a little while away. We're in July right now. So have you put much thought into your any future costumes or anything that you want to do?
I've had a few ideas, but nothing stuck or grounded with me. I try throughout the year to say, oh, that's something I might want to do. That's something I might want to do. How about you? Anything?
I'm not really I haven't really thought too much about what I want to do myself, but I've been putting more thought into my future kid. And what I would like cute stuff as they're a toddler, and maybe even going into cosplay stuff with them and try to get them into it, because I want my kid to be kind of fun and whimsical and everything like that. Let's make a costume together. Let's take this box and cut little pieces and build armor and a shield and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity to exercise creativity
and imagination, and yeah,
because I want my kid to have a fun childhood, but at the same time a little cheap too. At the same time,
I remember making I didn't make costumes with cardboard, but I'd make action figure play sets with cardboard. I remember making castles and graveyards, and they were crummy, but I'm sure my parents didn't say it, but I have this vague recollection of saying, that looks stupid. What are you doing? I'm like, it's a graveyard. But
How did your parents feel about you making your own graveyard?
they just kind of nodded and went about. They you know, watching Stranger Things and having people say like, how can these parents not know what's going on in their kids' lives? I'm like, no, that's totally what it was like in the 80s. Like, yeah,
totally. Oh my god. Even in the 90s.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't think they really cared or even acknowledged that it was a graveyard. They just saw me using scissors
playing.
Okay. Yeah. Like,
Oh
whatever,
my
stop
god.
bothering me.
One of the best costumes that I ever did. Do you ever watch you watch anime?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Did you ever watch Naruto?
I've seen a couple episodes, but not the whole thing, not a whole season.
I did a Kisame. He's one of like the bad guys and everything like that. He basically has a giant sword that's like this giant, like, imagine like a giant oversized baseball bat where it's like this big cylinder and everything like that, and there's these little spikes on them. I remember taking a box and cutting all these little scales to be spikes, and I like paper mache'd it, wrapped all it around it. It took hours and hours to cut all the pieces, but it was so worth it. It was probably one of the better costumes that I've ever done.
That's
next to
awesome. You gotta find these pictures. Bring that hard drive out.
I gotta find. Oh, all right. I'll try to dig it up and post it on Twitter.
Sounds good.
God, I hope I can find it. It was so good. Oh my god! Like, that's the kind of things that I want to do with my kid.
That's cool.
All right. So, what's your updated Sheldon tally?
Right now we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 for being Sheldon, 4 for not being Sheldon.
All right, you're still a Sheldon, but not Sheldon is creeping up.
It gained some points this episode.
All right, any last minute things? Anything that we may have missed?
No, I think I've said my piece. I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah. So, thanks everyone for listening. Please remember to leave us a review. Again, 5-star reviews are going to get a shout out on the podcast. You could find us on Spotify, Apple, and Stitcher. If you have any questions, comments, or just want to reach out to us, email us at theoreticalnonsensepod@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time as we talk about Season 1, Episode 7, The Dumpling Paradox.
Thank you all for listening.
Bye! This was Theoretical Nonsense, the Big Bang Theory watch-along. No PhD necessary. Our intro and outro music is by Alice Grohl. Please remember to leave us a review on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Stitcher. Follow us on Twitter at TheoreticalPod, or send us an email at theoreticalnonsensepod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.